Hi, folks. You know, Democrats have gone full unhinged, screaming in the streets, banning what they hate and taxing like kleptocrats on bath salts. And you need to look no further than the likes of communist Democrat Zohran Mamdani, the Leninist salesman trying to convince New York millionaires they'll love coughing up a bit more money, like Stockholm Syndrome in a tax bracket. And then we've got Greta Thunberg docking her so-called freedom flotilla in Tunisia to declare genocide on behalf of her Hamas fanboys. Because apparently Democrats now take policy advice from a Swedish doomsday mascot with a sailboat.
Just across the water from here, there is a genocide going on.
Oh, stop it.
A mass starvation committed by Israel's murder machine. Keep your eyes on Gaza. We have global media reporting about this mission. Where is global media when it comes to reporting about the hell they're going through in this genocide? Where is global media when it comes to holding war criminals to account? When it comes to defending their journalist colleagues who are being systematically targeted and killed, risking their lives reporting about the situation in Gaza. This genocide is being enabled and fueled by our governments, our institutions, our companies, our elected officials who are supposed to represent us. End your complicity, everyone, end your complicity in this genocide. Be human. No one is free until Palestine is free.
So, anybody know what this has to do with climate change? Because I remember when Greta Thunberg was supposed to be worried about the planet, and now she's globetrotting to scream about genocide in Gaza. This is actually crazy. 10 years ago, she was telling us the world would end in 8 years. Whatever happened to that? Did the grift just move on to a new cause? Because that's what it looks like. Now, let's be clear. What's happening in Gaza is not a genocide, as Greta and the left want you to believe. Anyone with common sense knows that. The UN's definition of genocide focuses on intent to destroy a people in whole or in part. But here's the problem. Intent is almost impossible to prove. It's subjective. It depends entirely on who's writing the history books or running the tribunal. That's why even in international law, most genocides are rarely litigated on intent. It's a moving target, intentionally left ambiguous so the UN can slap the label on whatever suits their political agenda. That's why looking at data matters more. Historically, genocides involve catastrophic losses of life, not a few percentage points of a population, but massive swaths. In the Holocaust, for example, about 6 million Jews were exterminated, roughly 67% of Europe's Jewish population. In Rwanda, somewhere between 50 to 75% of the Tutsi were wiped out. In the Armenian genocide, estimates run from 44 to over 80% of the entire Armenian population in the Ottoman Empire. When you study the numbers, the pattern is clear. Real genocides tend to eliminate at least a third and often more than half of the targeted population. By contrast, even if you take Hamas's own inflated numbers at face value, the death toll in Gaza so far is under 5% of the population. Tragic? Yes. Bloody? Yes. But not a genocide. Not by any reasonable historic measure. And let's not forget, Hamas has been caught staging photos, faking casualties, and putting makeup on people to inflate propaganda. These are not credible sources at all. What's happening here is war, and war is ugly. No one denies that. But inflating it into something it isn't is dishonest. The reason this war began also matters because, let's remember, folks, on October 7th, Hamas invaded southern Israel. Ironically, one of the most pro-Palestinian regions in the country, full of liberal activists who used to cross into Gaza for humanitarian missions. And how were they repaid? By being slaughtered, kidnapped, raped, and murdered. Men, women, and children. That was the spark for this entire conflict. So what did people expect Israel to do as a response? Sit back and let it happen again? Imagine if Mexico crossed into California and butchered American families in their homes. You think America would just shrug and move on? No, America would crush Mexico to make sure it could never, ever do this again. Israel's response is the same. Brutal, yes, but existential in the context of the events. Now, obviously, none of this means innocent people should be dying. Civilian deaths are always tragic. Nobody supports that, but let's not ignore the context. Hamas is the elected and supported government of Gaza. Hamas hides behind civilians, stores weapons in schools, launches rockets from hospitals, and dares Israel to respond. When you embrace that strategy, or at the very least tolerate it, you are choosing to let yourself be used as a human shield for a terrorist movement, and that's a truly grim reality. So to make things absolutely clear, no, this is not a genocide. It's a war. It's brutal, it's bloody, and it's tragic. Real genocides exist in history, and it's an insult to those victims and their families to water down the word just to score cheap political points for your side. Less than 5% of Gaza's population dying in a war is terrible, but it does not meet any serious definition of genocide, and to call it that is a lie. And it's telling that activists like Greta need to exaggerate, because without the exaggeration, their moral argument completely collapses. And speaking of retarded Democrats, here we have Ariana Grande doing her VMA speech, and you guessed it.
Thank you to my therapists and gay people. I love you.
Well, whoever Ariana Grande's therapist is, man, you struck gold. You're definitely making hand over fist. And look, folks, I don't think I have to tell any of you this, but therapy is largely a scam. I genuinely believe the only real pathway out of any struggle is through God. And study after study has shown the more you sit and talk about your problems without any sort of resolution, the more you reinforce them. Talking doesn't cure, it multiplies. God already has all the solutions. And let's not forget where this whole therapy model came from. Sigmund Freud designed therapy to create lifelong patience. That's not a conspiracy. That's literally how he built it. It's the same model Big Pharma runs today. Don't actually fix anything, don't cure anything, just keep people dependent on endless sessions, endless prescriptions, endless cycles. A system that thrives on people staying broken instead of actually being healed. So when Ariana stands on stage at the VMAs and thanks her therapist, that's not just some quirky joke. It's Hollywood orthodoxy in a nutshell. Worship the cycle that keeps you medicated, dependent, and weaker. And then to complete the catechism, she thanks gay people. That's not gratitude. That's virtue signaling. It's not about individuals. It's about proving allegiance to the cultural cult, showing that she's an approved ally of the secular, far-left Democrat religion that runs Hollywood. And here's the irony. Just look at her. This is someone thanking her therapist as if therapy is helping. Yes, she looks worse than ever. She doesn't look like someone healed. She looks like someone deteriorating before our very eyes, genuinely unwell. Not just skinny, Eugenia Cooney skinny. You can see the sickness written on her face. The very system that's supposed to make her whole, that she's publicly celebrating, is the same one breaking her down. And that's the bigger story here, folks. Hollywood's culture is now so warped that standing on a stage in front of millions of kids and saying thank you to my therapist and gay people is considered inspirational. But what it really shows is moral rot. It's not gratitude, it's pure indoctrination. It's teaching the next generation to pledge loyalty. It's teaching the next generation to pledge loyalty to secular therapy instead of God, to empty virtue signaling instead of virtue, to a sickness that parades as health. And speaking of virtue signaling, we have here a so-called Australian senator just trying really hard to reach Gen Z.
To the Sigmas of Australia, the goofier government is still capping, but is anyone surprised? When a risless, oralist, unk Prime Minister is running a show, a chopped government is what follows.
What?
It seems like every day they're asking, Twin, can I borrow $1? Twin?
Huh?
It's so performative. I'm surprised there isn't a Minister for Labubu's or a Parliamentary Secretary for Dubai Chocolate.
What?
One of the issues I've been tweaking about lately is AI safety. Australia has the potential to be peak at implementing this technology safely, but at the moment, there's more AI slop than a Deloitte report.
Are you retarded?
ICL, TSPMOSM, wilted rose emoji. Whenever the government talk about AI, they tell us the incredible productivity lift it offers. At Grok, is this true?
Oh my
like
God,
speed doing
bro,
a backflip, the attitude is good, but only the dangerous part. Our government, like Tung 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 Sahur, needs to wield a big stick. To all the industry insiders who suggest that AI should be allowed to train on copyrighted material for free, I only have one thing to say. Sigh down. Some new gens think what I'm doing is clip farming, but I'll keep rage baiting until they crash out. So, Sigmas, keep hope posting, keep mewing, and keep doing it your best, twin. Those who know. Oh, and 6'7".
Look, folks, I'm not really going to mince words here. I don't think I've experienced this level of cringe in a long time. Just wow. Watching this speech, I feel like I need a translator, a therapist, and maybe even an exorcist. What a complete waste of taxpayer dollars. If you're Australian and you're seeing this in real time, scratching your head wondering, did this woman just have a stroke? No. This is actually her trying to make a point. What point? Nobody knows. This is a desperate attempt to pander to the Gen Z internet slang while standing in Parliament. And here's a deeper problem. This isn't just one politician embarrassing herself to the world. It's a symptom of a political class so obsessed with performance and online clout that they'd rather speak in memes than actually govern. When the halls of government start sounding like a TikTok comment section, it tells you everything about how unserious and shallow the left's grip on culture has become. Style over substance, distraction over duty, pandering over policy. This isn't leadership. It's degeneracy dressed up as relevance, and it's exactly why people are losing faith in our Western institutions because of retards like this lady. And speaking of somebody who should have some shame and probably lose some weight, Chris Christie is chiming in on why RFK Jr. should be fired.
I mean, let's face it. You looked at that appearance before Congress, and it just confirms what all of us around this table have known for decades. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a foolish man.
Oh, my God.
Full of foolish and vapid ideas.
Put the hamburger down.
And that was on display again this week in front of Congress. And I really don't want to hear about Bill Cassidy because he is a co-conspirator with the President of the United States for putting this wholly unqualified man in charge of 25% of all government spending. Without Cassidy's vote, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. would not be it. And maybe he's feeling some guilt from what he did. But I'll tell you this, the president did this. He knows. The president's smart enough to know RFK Jr. doesn't belong in that job. But after he won, he wanted to show everybody, I can do whatever I want to do because this Senate will be compliant no matter what I do. And I'll put the greatest vaccine and public health denier of the last 20 years in charge of public health in America. It's a human middle finger, George, to everybody who opposed him.
Chris Christie should probably be more worried about his HDL levels than whatever RFK Jr. is saying. But his attack actually reveals something deeper about how politics works in America. The fact that Christie is going after RFK Jr. tells you everything about how former politicians, establishment figures, and media like ABC News line up to protect their own, to defend a system that feeds them. Because the greatest moment of the entire hearing was RFK Jr. calling out senators who are blatantly in the pockets of Big Pharma, like Elizabeth Warren, who has pulled in nearly $1 million in campaign cash from the pharmaceutical industry, and she's hardly alone. There's also Bernie Sanders, and I could go down a list, but this is the real scandal, folks. People who posture as defenders of public health while cashing checks from the very companies they're supposed to regulate. Christie sneering doesn't challenge RFK Jr.'s arguments. It shields the corruption of a ruling class that's turned medicine into a marketplace and policy into a pay-to-play racket. This isn't just about RFK Jr. or Christie's cheap insults. It's about a political system where Democrats especially rake in pharma money and then pretend to be shocked when Americans don't trust them. Why would anybody stand for that? And also, put down the cheeseburger. And since we're on the train of establishment retardation, might as well stop at the Zohran Mamdani Comic-Con.
Right now, the top 1% earners in the city pay 40% of the city's income taxes, according to the Empire Center for Public Policy. How do you bring these wealthy residents to the table as mayor? Stop them from saying they're leaving, going to Florida, because we need that tax revenue to pay for some of the things you're talking about. How do you pay for it if they're gone?
Well, the first thing I have to say is I was proud to be the only candidate for mayor at that march. And I was proud because some of the chants at that march, they were asking, is the dream alive?
Right.
Is Dr. King's dream still alive? And he asked the question decades ago, what good is having the right to sit at a lunch counter if you can't afford to buy a hamburger?
Right.
That's a question that New Yorkers are still wrestling with today in 2025. And so what I have put forward is a vision to make the most expensive city in the United States of America affordable. At a time when we have the wealthiest city, it is also one where 1 in 4 are living in poverty. And to your point, we have a number of New Yorkers who are doing quite well. The top 1% of New York City earns $1 million or more a year. And my vision is not one where they leave, it is one where they stay. It is
How do you get them to stay?
in part by showing them that asking them to pay more in taxes would increase even their quality of life. Because when you ask New Yorkers, what is it that is making them feel uneasy in this city, you often hear from them about the cleanliness of our city, the safety of our city, the affordability of our city. We are not asking to raise these taxes for the sake of it. We're asking so that we can actually make the slowest buses in the country fast and free, so that we can actually create a Department of Community Safety that would deploy dedicated teams of mental health outreach workers to the top.
The fact that this dude can lie so prolifically should concern everyone, from New York voters to the broader Democrat establishment, because what Zohran Mamdani just did was talk in circles because of a basic question. He was asked how he's going to keep New York's top 1%, who already pay 40% of the city's income taxes, invested in staying when their taxes are already sky high, their quality of life hasn't improved in years, and they're getting very little in return. And instead of answering, he dodged. He said, we'll show them their quality of life will improve. How, dude? He never said how. What's the business plan? What's the accountability mechanism? His selling point is free buses, but the MTA already runs a multi-billion-dollar annual deficit. Hiking taxes on the rich won't even put a dent on that problem, let alone clean the streets, reduce crime, or solve the homelessness. The result isn't going to be a higher quality of life. It's going to be more wealthy people packing up and leaving behind a poorer, emptier city. And then Mamdani tries the most disingenuous dodge of all, claiming people are leaving for California. No, they're not. California has posted some of the worst population declines in the country over the past 5 years, losing hundreds of thousands of residents and large swaths of the middle class. The only reason California's numbers ticked up last year is because of illegal immigration, not because taxpayers are moving in. The reality is when people leave New York, they're heading to states like Florida, Texas, Tennessee, and Arizona, states with lower taxes, more accountability, and better quality of life. That's not an accident. That's a migration pattern. This is the bigger problem, folks. Low IQ ideologues like Mamdani push policies that cannibalize the very foundations of prosperous cities. They don't fix deficits. They don't solve the crime or the filth. They just keep squeezing the productive class until it leaves. And then New York is left as a hollowed out shell, another wasteland of failed progressive policy. The sad truth is, the liberal base in these cities has a political death wish. They think punishing the wealthy is justice, when all it really does is burn down the house they're standing in. It's entitlement without investment, resentment without responsibility, and it's driving some of America's most iconic cities straight into collapse, all because of envy. These people are envious of the people who are more successful than them, and they decided to burn the entire system down. And so the question isn't just about one politician, one celebrity, or one soundbite. It's about whether we as a people are willing to keep swallowing the stories we're being sold. How long will we let Democrats frame failure as progress, or let culture dress decay up as virtue? How many times can we be told that the very systems hollowing out our lives are the ones that will somehow save us? At some point, each of us has to ask, are we thinking for ourselves, or are we just repeating the slogans handed down by institutions that profit from our compliance? The real test of this moment is whether ordinary Americans still have the courage to see through the noise and to demand more than illusions from those who claim to lead us. Anyway, folks, you tell me what you think in the comments down below. Hope you have a terrific day. Peace.